Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to our read-along of Mr. Scarborough's Family by Anthony Trollope. A read-along with the mostest, because I'm not just breaking this book down for you, I'm actually reading it to you. And we just saw poor old Mr. Scarborough fire off a couple of letters in the last chapter. To the two combatants, actually, to Captain Montjoy Scarborough, his eldest son, and to Harry Annesley, the man who left Captain Montjoy face down on the pavement, apparently unconscious. And did not tell the world about that fact. And both men in love with the same young woman, Florence Montjoy. Mr. Scarborough is planning something. He's been told that he has 3 to 6 months to live, and he's thinking that ought to be long enough to do what I have in mind. And we've been told at least part of what he has in mind, which is he can't break the entail on his property. It's going to his son Augustus Scarborough. But he can give everything else, everything that isn't nailed down. The furniture, the cattle, the farm proceeds, the townhouse in London. He can give all of that to Montjoy Scarborough and just leave Augustus Scarborough with the bare acres of the family estate, Tretton Park. So he has fired off 2 letters, 3 really. He fired off a letter to Montjoy Scarborough telling him, please come to Tretton. It's going to be more comfortable for you here than it is sponging off your brother, who's not a very nice host. And it doesn't have to mean anything, but also there's a bit of business I want to talk about with you that might be of interest to you. He fires off a letter to his lawyer, Mr. Gray, saying, please come to Tretton Park. I know I told you to come once before, and I said that would be the last time, but I think circumstances have changed. I'd very much like it if you would come here. And he fires off a letter to Harry Annesley, telling him, I was pleased by your visit. Please come back. I can arrange it so that you don't meet Captain Scarborough if that's a big deal. Those are blockbuster letters. Maybe not the one to Mr. Gray, who's expecting extravagances from his client, but the others? And so Trollope goes right along here in chapter 39 to how those letters were received. That's actually the title of this chapter, how the letters were received. So we're just going to go straight on to that. We must now describe the feelings of Mr. Scarborough's correspondents as they received his letters. When Mr. Gray began to read that which was addressed to him, he declared that on no consideration would he go down to Tretton. He's had his fill of the place. But when he came to inquire within himself as to his objection, he found that it lay chiefly with his great dislike of Augustus Scarborough. For the poor Montjoy, as he called him, he entertained a feeling of deep pity, a pity we know is akin to love. And for the squire, he in his heart felt but little of that profound dislike which he was aware such conduct as the squire's ought to have generated. He can't make himself hate the old man. Oh, he's the greatest rascal that I ever knew, he said again and again, both to Dolly and to Mr. Barry, that's his daughter and his law partner. But yet he did not regard him as an honest man regards the rascal, but was angry with himself in consequence. He knew there remained within him even some spark of love for Mr. Scarborough, which to himself was inexplicable. From the moment in which he had first admitted to the fact that Augustus Scarborough was the true heir in law, he had been most determined in taking care that the heirship should be established. It must be known to all men that Montjoy was not the eldest son of his father, as the law required him to be for the inheritance of the property, and that Augustus was the eldest son. But in arranging these truths should be notorious, it had come to pass that he had learned to hate Augustus with an intensity that had redounded to the advantage of Montjoy and his father. Because Montjoy might be a gambling addict and a ruffian, and his father might be a rascal, but they both come off smelling like a rose compared to Augustus Scarborough. It must be so. Augustus must become Augustus Scarborough, Esquire of Tretton. But the worse luck for Tretton and all connected with it. And Mr. Gray did resolve that when the day should come, all relation between himself and Tretton should cease. So he's not planning on being Augustus Scarborough's lawyer. And who can blame him? Very interesting opening to this chapter. Trollope explicitly mentions the word love, not once but twice. It had never occurred to him that by redeeming the post-obit bonds, Montjoy would become capable of owning and enjoying any property that might be left to him. Remember, that's been done. The post-obit notes, the debts raised on Montjoy's expectation of inheriting Tretton Park have been paid. So Montjoy has been disinherited, sure, he's not the eldest son anymore, but there are no claims on Tretton Park anymore. The belongings of Tretton, which were personal property, would in themselves amount to a wealth for a younger son. That which Mr. Scarborough would in this way be able to bequeath might probably be worth £30,000. A staggering amount of money. Out of the proceeds of the real property, the debts had been paid, and because Augustus had consented so to pay them, he was now to be mulched out of those loose belongings which gave its charm to Tretton. Augustus is going to lose all the nice things, all the pretty things. Because Augustus had paid Montjoy's debts, Montjoy wasn't able to rob Augustus. There was a wickedness in this redolent of the old squire, but it was a wickedness in arranging which Mr. Grey hesitated to participate. As he thought of it, however, he could not but feel that what a clever man he had for a client. "It will all go to the gambling table, of course," he said that night to Dolly, meaning any money that goes to Montjoy Scarborough. He will just gamble it away. "It is no affair of ours." "No, but when a lawyer is consulted, he has to think of the prudent or imprudent disposition of the property." Mr. Scarborough hasn't consulted you, Papa." "I must look at it as though he had. He tells me that what he intends to do, and I am bound to give him my advice. I cannot advise him to bestow all these things on Augustus, whom I regard as a long way the worst of the family." "You need not care about that." "And here again," continued Mr. Grey, "comes up the question, what is it that duty demands? Augustus is the eldest son, and is entitled to what the law allots him, but Montjoy was brought up as the eldest son, and is certainly entitled to what provision the father can make him." "You cannot provide for such a gambler." "I don't know that comes within my duty. It is not my fault that Montjoy is a gambler, any more than it is my fault that Augustus is a beast." Gambler and beast, they are. And moreover, nothing will turn the squire from his purpose. I am only a tool in his hands, a trowel for the laying of his mortar and bricks. Of course, I must draw his will, and shall do it with some pleasure, because it will dispossess Augustus. Not completely. He'll still get Tretton, but he'll get only that, the building, the 4 walls. Then Mr. Grey went to bed, and so also did Dolly. But she was not at all surprised at being summoned to his couch after she had been an hour in her own bed, because this is a little ritual that they have. They go to bed, they take their candles, they say their good nights, and then later, very timidly, Mr. Grey knocks on her door, and then he hurries back to his own room in his nightgown, hops into bed, and waits for her to join him there so they can talk about the law. "I think that I shall go down to Tretton," said Mr. Grey. "You declared that you would never go there again." "So I did, but I did not know then how much I might come to hate Augustus Scarborough." "Would you go to Tretton merely to injure him?" "I have been thinking about that," said Mr. Grey. "I don't know that I would go simply to do him an injury, but I think that I would go to see that justice is properly done." "Yeah, you're a lawyer, all right." "That can be arranged without you going to Tretton. By putting our heads together, I think we can contrive that the deed shall be more effectually performed. What we must attempt to do is save this property from going to the gambling table. There is only one way that occurs to me." "What is that?" "It must be left to his wife." "But he hasn't a wife." "It must be left to some woman who he will consent to marry. There are 3 objects: to keep it from Augustus, to give the enjoyment of it to Montjoy, and to prevent Montjoy from gambling with it. The only thing I can see is a wife." "I'm no lawyer, much less a 19th century lawyer in 1880s, but I can see another way." "Definitely another way. Lock it up and pay it out to Montjoy in monthly installments. The interest. Just the interest, not the principal. Set a comptroller over it. Doesn't have to be a wife." "There is a girl he wants to marry," said Dolly, "but she doesn't want to marry him, and I doubt whether he can be got to marry anyone else. There is still a peck of difficulties." "Oh, Papa, I wish you would wash your hands of the Scarboroughs." "I must go to Tretton first. And now, my dear, you are doing no good by sitting up here talking to me." Then, with a smile, Dolly took herself off to her own chamber. Montjoy, when he got his letter, was sitting over a late breakfast in Victoria Street. That's his brother's abode. It was near 12 o'clock, and he was enjoying the delicious luxury of having his breakfast to eat, with a cigar after it, and nothing else to do that he needed. But the fruition of all these comforts was somewhat marred by the knowledge that he had had no such dinner to expect. He must go out and look for a dinner among the eating-houses. The next morning would bring him no breakfast, and if he were to remain longer in Victoria Street, he must do so in direct opposition to the owner of the establishment. Augustus Scarborough's had enough of his brother. No more freeloading, no more meals. He had that morning received notice to quit, and had been told that the following breakfast would be the last meal served to him. "Let it be good of its kind," Montjoy had said. "I believe you care for nothing but eating and drinking. There's little else that you can do for me." And so they parted. Montjoy had taken the precaution of having his letters addressed to the house of the friendly bootmaker, and now, as he was slowly pouring out his first cup of coffee and thinking how nearly it must be his last, his father's letter was brought to him. The letter had been delayed one day, as he himself had omitted to call for it, but it was necessarily a sad time for him. He was a man who fought hard against melancholy, taking it as a primary rule of life that, for such a one as he had become, the pleasure of the immediate moment should suffice. If one day, or better still one night, of excitement was in store for him, the next day should be regarded as the unlimited future, for which no man can be responsible. But such a philosophy will too frequently be insufficient for the stoutest of hearts. It's true. Such a philosophy would be a lot healthier for a lot of people, but you can't maintain it. Montjoy's heart would occasionally almost give way, and then his thoughts would be dreary enough. Hunger, absolute hunger, without the assured expectation of food, had never yet come upon him. But in order to put stop to its cravings, if he should find it troublesome to bear, he had already provided himself with a pistol and bullets. So he's in exactly the right mental position to get a letter from his father saying, "Come to Tretton and eat as much as you want." And now, with the cup of coffee before him, aromatic, creamy, and hot, with a filleted sole rolled up before him on a little dish, 3 or 4 plover's eggs, of which to finish, lying by, and on the distance of the table a chase of brandy, of which he already knew well the virtues, he got his father's letter. He did not at first open it, disliking all thoughts as to his father. Then gradually he tore the envelope and was slow in understanding the full meaning of the last lines. The last lines where his father says, "It's not just that I want your company, it's that I think I have something to talk to you about." He did not at once perceive the irony of his brother's kindly interference, and the generosity which had enabled him, Montjoy, to be the recipient of property. But his father proposed to do something for his benefit. Gradually it dawned upon him that his father could only do that something effectively because of his brother's dealings with the creditors. There wouldn't be anything that old Scarborough could do for Montjoy if the enormous amounts that Montjoy owed were still outstanding, but they're not. They've been paid. Montjoy is at the moment a man with no debts, except to the friendly bootmaker. Then the chairs and tables and the gem or two and the odd volumes one by one made themselves intelligible. That a father should write so to one son and should so write of another was marvelous. But then his father was a marvelous man, whose character was only beginning to understand. His father, he told himself, had fortunately taken it into his head to hate Augustus, and intended in consequence to strip Tretton and the property generally of all their outside personal belongings, which would go to him. £30,000. Yes, he thought that with such an object before him, he would certainly go and see Mr. Grey, and if Mr. Grey should so advise him, he would go down to Tretton. On such business as this, he would consent to see his father. He did not think that just at present he need have recourse to his pistol for his devices. He could not on the very day go to Tretton, as it would be necessary that he should write to his father first. His brother would probably extend his hospitality for a couple of days when he should hear of the proposed journey, and if not, would lend him the money for his present purposes, or under existing circumstances he might probably be able to borrow it from Mr. Grey. Mr. Grey would certainly lend him the money to go to Tretton. With a heart elevated almost to absolute bliss, he ate his breakfast and drank his chase and smoked his cigar, and then rose slowly that he might proceed to Mr. Grey's chambers. But at this moment Augustus came in. He had only breakfasted at his own club, much less comfortably than he would have done at home, in order that he might not sit at the table with his brother. He had now returned so that he might see to Montjoy's departure. "After all, Augustus, I am going down to Tretton," said the elder brother, as he folded up his father's letter. "What arguments has the old man used now?" Montjoy did not think it well to tell his brother the exact nature of the arguments used, and therefore put the letter into his pocket. Remember, as far as Augustus knows, the old man has asked Montjoy to go down to Tretton, and Montjoy has roundly refused. Now, all of a sudden, he's changed his mind. "He wishes to say something to me about the property," said Montjoy. Then some idea of the old squire's scheme fell with a crushing weight of anticipated sorrow on Augustus. In a moment it all occurred to him, what his father might do, what injuries he might inflict, and, saddest of all feelings, there came the immediate reflection that it had all been rendered possible by his own doings. He paid the creditors, or it wouldn't have been possible. With the conviction that so much might be left away from him, there came also the further feeling that after all there was a chance that his father had invented the story of his brother's illegitimacy, that Montjoy was now free from debt, and that Tretton with all its belongings might now go back to him. That his father would do it if it were possible he did not doubt. From week to week he had waited impatiently for his father's demise, and had expected little or none of that mental activity which his father had exercised. What a fool he had been, he said to himself, sitting opposite Montjoy, who in the vacancy of the moment had lighted another cigar. What an ass! Had he played cards better, had he comforted and flattered and cosseted the old man, Montjoy might have gone his own way to the dogs. Now, at the best, Tretton would come to him stripped of everything, and at worst, no Tretton would come to him at all. Oh, the Scarborough family. Oh, well, what are you going to do? He said roughly. I think I shall probably go down and see the governor. Montjoy has everything in his own hand now. He can be insolent. All your feelings about your mother, then, are blown to the wind? Remember, that's what Montjoy said. The thing that outrages him is that this is all a slur on their mother. His and Augustus's mother. It's all a slur on her. This whole nonsense about him not being legitimate, about her having him out of wedlock and hiding the fact. That was Montjoy's professed objection. Now things have changed. My feelings about your mother are not blown to the winds at all, but to speak of her you would be wasting breath. I hadn't the pleasure of knowing her, said Augustus, and I am not aware that she did me any great kindness in bringing me into the world. Do you go to Tretton this afternoon? Probably not. Or tomorrow? Possibly tomorrow. Because I find it convenient to have your room. Remember, we have had this construction before. This is the way that you do things. This is how Mr. Scarborough said it down in Tretton Park. You don't tell the person, get out. You tell them, I need your room. Of course, Augustus Scarborough does not need Montjoy Scarborough's room. He doesn't have any guests. But it's the convention. It's the polite way to be rude to somebody and tell them to go. Today, of course, I cannot stir. Tomorrow morning, I should at any rate like to have my breakfast. Here he paused for a reply, but none came from his brother. I must have some money to go down to Tretton with. I suppose you can lend it to me just for the present? Not a shilling, said Augustus, in thorough ill humour. I shall be able to pay you very shortly. Not a shilling. The return I have had from you for all I have done is not in the nature to make me do more. If I had ever thought that you had extended a sovereign except out of the object of furthering some plot of your own, I should have been grateful. As it is, I do not know that we owe very much to each other. Then he left the room, and getting into a cab, went away to Lincoln's Inn. This is the brothers that we're talking about. They hate each other. Harry Annesley received Mr. Scarborough's letter down at Buston, and was much surprised by it. He had not spent the winter hitherto very pleasantly. His uncle he had never seen, though he had heard from day to day sundry stories of his wooing. Uncle Prosper is trying to get a wife and have a child, so that his own entail doesn't have to go to Harry Annesley, who he doesn't like. He had soon given up his hunting, feeling himself ashamed in his present nameless position to ride Joshua Thoroughbung's horses. He had taken to hard reading, but the hard reading had failed, and he had been given up to the miseries of his position. Hard reading. Does the rectory have a library? I bet it does. I bet it has a cozy little library. Really nice one. I tell you, if us book people could be transported into these books, we wouldn't have any of these adventures. We wouldn't be on Trollop fox hunts. We'd be in the library reading. The hard reading had been continued for a fortnight or 3 weeks, during which he had at any rate respected himself. But in an evil hour he had allowed it to escape from him, and now it was again miserable. Then the invitation from Tretton had been received. I've got a letter. It's from Mr. Scarborough of Tretton. What does Mr. Scarborough say? He wants me to go down there. Do you know Mr. Scarborough? I believe you have altogether quarrelled with his son. Oh, yes, I have quarrelled with Augustus, and I have had an encounter with Montjoy not in the most friendly terms. But the father and Montjoy seem to be reconciled. You can see his letter. At any rate, I shall go down there. To this, Mr. Annesley Sr. made no objection. So it's only in that last line of the chapter that we learn who the hell he's talking to. He's talking to his father. So Mr. Grey is going to Tretton, Montjoy is going to Tretton, and Harry Annesley is going to Tretton. They are all going to Tretton Park. So I think it's likely that in the next chapter we will go to Tretton and see what old Mr. Scarborough has in mind. Are Harry and Montjoy going to come to blows again? Is Mr. Gray going to yell at Mr. Scarborough? Let's find out together. We'll reconvene for the next chapter, and I'll see you then. Thank you, Book 2.